If you are single and you are desiring marriage, it is so important that you watch what you say, especially if you're someone who finds yourself feeling like time is ticking or that you've been single for a long time and marriage doesn't look like something that will happen anytime soon. It's still important that you watch your words. And so I want to give you 5 things that you need to avoid speaking or even saying as a single who is desiring marriage. So y'all make sure to take some notes and even stay until the end because I believe this is going to be a very impactful video. And if you're brave, you can put in the comments if there's something that you have said and that you need to repent and renounce, okay? And I'm gonna be honest, I've said a few of these things, but glory be to God, they did not come into fruition. So, the first thing you should never say as a single who is desiring marriage is, I'll never get married, or I'll just be single for the rest of my life. A lot of times we find ourselves speaking this or something related to this due to being fed up, due to being weary and tired and just disappointment after disappointment. But I encourage you to not say that, despite what it might even look like, because this is what is known as a word curse. You're speaking against the situation. And Proverbs 18:21 is very clear that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. If you're speaking these words of death over your situation, it is likely you will reap the fruit of those words. If you can't speak life, at least don't speak at all. Do not speak at your situation because you don't want to be speaking death over it. And a lot of times these words can come from a place of loneliness. And one of the books that Damien had me read before we got into relationship was his book Completely Single, which is becoming the right one before meeting the right one. In his introduction, he talks about loneliness and how we can say a lot of things when we're lonely or when we're down. It's important to surround yourself with other people. God has made provisions for our loneliness. So, your family, friends, people from church, do life with them. And so that way you won't feel lonely and unloved or unwanted. The second thing that you should never say is, there's no godly men or godly women left, or something along the lines of all men are dogs or all women lie or whatever it may be. That is a lie. And again, it is speaking death over your situation. But you have to realize there are still godly men and women left. You might not just notice them. A lot of times they're in hiding. God has them in a hiding season for the right time, or you just haven't met them yet. I love the story of Elijah. I believe it's in First Kings, where he had just defeated the prophets of Baal, and Jezebel just started making threats towards his life. So he runs away, and God comes like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm the only prophet left. They have killed everyone else. It's just me." And this story is retold in Romans 11, where God's like, no, like I have reserved 7,000 men who've not bowed their knees to Baal. And so we have to understand that there is still a remnant of godly men and godly women that are not married yet. We cannot have a lack mentality when it comes to the dating pool and who's available. I'm gonna raise my hand to this one. I've said this one in the past, like, especially after a bad breakup, someone cheating on me, or just like something that has gone so far south. And I'm like, ain't no godly men left. And I was like, yes, there are. There's plenty of them. And we have talked to them on our calls. You are a single or dating person and you're needing advice or just wanting to grow in your discernment when it comes to relationships and just preparing for the right one, I encourage you to click the link in the description, fill out an application, and book a coaching call with me and my husband. So again, don't have a lack mentality when it comes to dating. Yes, there are some crazy wolves in sheep clothing. Yes, some crazy people out there, but there is still a remnant. And God is also calling his men and women back to him, who he is preparing and making it new. And so continue to trust the Lord for your future spouse. You don't have to settle. So avoid that temptation to settle, which leads to my third point. God's ways are keeping me single. I'm going to have to just do things my own way or the world's way, or just lower my standards just a little bit. Do not do this. Abort mission, okay? This is not what you want. I've been there. I've gone astray from God's ways of walking in holiness and discerning and checking the fruit and making sure that I am talking to someone who is also a believer. Do not try a missionary date. It's easier for them to get you away from the Lord than you to get them to the Lord. I'm not saying there hasn't been successful things out there, but that's not the norm. Those are the outliers. Also, do not test drive or lower your boundaries. A lot of times we hear how there's even professing Christians who are like, I believe in the Lord and the Bible and all that, but I need to test to make sure we're compatible before I make this a covenant. That is not God's ways. That is the world's way. And so if someone is not willing to wait until marriage, run, run. You want someone who can operate in self-control before marriage so that they can operate in self-control in marriage. Marriage does not cure lust. That's why we have adultery. That's why they're still struggling with certain images. Want to make sure that we're honoring God before the relationship and before the marriage so that way we can continue to honor God in the marriage. So don't settle, y'all. God's ways are for your protection. I love what Deuteronomy 10:13 says. And you must always obey the Lord's commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good. The reason why that God says certain things in his word, like making sure that you're walking in holiness because he is holy, you can avoid STDs. You can avoid pregnancy out of wedlock and potentially being a single parent. The shame and guilt that often comes with not doing things God's way. Does that mean relationships will always enter into marriage? No, but you will save yourself from a lot of hurt and pain by simply doing things God's way. You don't want to play with the fire. You don't want to play with sin. I have been there if you've heard my testimony. Lord, thank you for saving me. Okay. And so God's ways are for our good. Yeah, you might look at people in the world and say, well, they look like they living their best life and they ain't following the Lord. A lot of times it's a facade, but it's always in your best interest to obey the Lord, not just for this life, but for the life to come. God's ways are not a prison. They're not to make your life miserable. They're protection. They are a fence all the way back into the garden. When God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the forbidden tree, it was for their good, but it was so much more that they were able to partake in. But the enemy wants you to realize those things that the Lord say stay away from, even if you don't understand, and take your eyes off of what you can do and the blessings that are available for you right now. Avoid the temptation to say, you know what? God's ways are keeping me single. God's ways are keeping you from a lot of shenanigans and counterfeits. If you stay in his standards, you're going to bypass a lot of the nonsense that people deal with when they are not obeying the Lord. If you say up front that you are waiting till marriage, you're going to bypass a lot of wolves in sheep clothing, okay? You might seem like your phone is dry, no one's giving you attention, but trust me, it's saving you from the headache and it's saving you from the unwanted baggage. Obey the Lord because it is for your own good. Now, the fourth one that I want to say, now this might get some people because there's a lot of name it and claim it, prosperity, manifest, speak those things that are not as though they were. Manifesting, that's new age type stuff. Yes, we can declare things according to God's will, but don't be trying to manipulate and control things. And so the fourth one is I'm going to be married by this time. I'm going to be married by the end of the year. I'm going to be married by insert an age. What is your life? Okay, what is your life? And I can raise my hand to this one too. I remember, I always grew up wanting to get married early, like, 22, 23, had my first child at like 25. I didn't get married to right before 30. And for some of y'all, you might be saying that's not that old. For me, according to my timeline and my wants, that was about 7 years of like, okay, Lord, where my husband at? And majority of that time, I was not in a relationship. I was single as a Pringle, okay? But James 4:13 and 15 says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. And so a lot of times we put this pressure on God on this timeline. Oh, I'm going to declare this is my year that I'm going to get married. I'm going to declare it, decree it. And then that year goes by and you like, what happened? I thought there's power in my words. We cannot manipulate God's timeline and we don't know what tomorrow holds. We have to walk in humility and say, Lord, I desire to be married at the end of this year. I know you can do a lot, but it's according to your will, and help me to remain, to be steadfast and not give up. But when we put that timeline on there, then you're going and you're being obsessed with, okay, I got to find somebody. Okay. And then you start looking past red flags because the time is ticking and you're like, I made this proclamation by the end of this year, I need to be married. So I encourage you, let go of timelines. We can't manipulate outside of God's will. And I've heard of some people who've been like, I'm gonna be married by the end of the year by any means necessary. And they literally have married whoever would say yes. And it did not end well. By the end of the following year, they weren't even married anymore or in some kind of shenanigans, wishing they didn't do that. The fifth and final one that you never want to say as a single, if you are desiring marriage, is that God don't care who I marry. It don't take all that. I need to just pick somebody and God's going to be okay with that. God cares about every single thing about your life, especially who you marry. Who you decide to marry is probably the second most important decision you will ever make outside of you saying yes to following Jesus. Sometimes there's two ends of the spectrum where some people are like, oh, I'm going to wait until God declares from heaven that this is your spouse before I even pursue someone or respond to a pursuit. And then you have the other end is like, God don't care about any of that. I can just choose and he's going to be okay. You need to get into the middle of saying, look, Lord, I know I have free choice, but I'm going to seek your will. I'm going to seek your direction. I'm going to do according to the Bible in helping me decide who to say yes to. I want you to lead me and guide me and confirm that this person is someone who you have for me. Proverbs 3:5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will direct your paths. Y'all, he wants to direct every decision that we make. And we have to inquire of him and get godly community and test the things according to the word of God to make sure that we are in his will, especially when it comes to who we choose to marry. If you're new here and this is your first time watching one of these videos, me and my husband share a lot how God revealed that he was my future spouse. However, I forgot that and I did not use that knowledge in any way in our courtship to marriage. God reminded me as we were engaged. But I sought the Lord's will throughout the entire way, and he confirmed that this was his will. And so I encourage you, invite the Lord in who you choose to marry, that you can walk in faith and that you can make sure that you're honoring God as you're seeking for a spouse. But don't kick him out. Don't expect him, like I said, for him to say, this is your spouse, even before you say hello. We can honor him and seek his will in all you do, and he's going to direct your path. Again, if you are a single or a dating person who is desiring a godly marriage and you would like to sit down with me and my husband over a Zoom call, and whether you are needing to grow in discernment, wanting to learn how to do relationships God's way, break unhealthy cycles in the past, or even just get advice of your situation, I encourage you to click the link in the description, fill out the application, and book a coaching call with us today. We love to sit down with you and hear a little bit of your story. So I pray this video blessed you. Again, if you bold, which one you said that you need to be like, I renounce that. I'm gonna stop that. But speak life. And I'm praying for you that at the right time, God will give you the desires of your heart and that you'll experience a godly kingdom marriage in His will and according to His time. I'll make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and send this video out to someone who needs to hear it. And if this video blessed you, you'll probably like these. Y'all be blessed, and I'll see you in the next video.